Today we'll look at the 10 best decks in Paradox Rift Standard Format, Community Choice Edition. Since I don't have much data yet for the best Paradox Rift decks, I decided instead of just my opinion, let's ask the community as well. Out of a list of 30 different archetypes, including many new ones, 100 community members voted for their top 10. I'll feature deck lists for each archetype as we count down the top 10, and be sure to let me know how you would have voted in the comments. Kicking things off with number 10, Giratina VSTAR Lost Zone. Giratina has consistently teetered between a good deck and one of the best for several months now, so I can see why more than half of the respondents included it in their top 10 decks. Giratina VSTAR doesn't gain many new cards out of Paradox Rift compared to some decks, but it does receive Counter Catcher, which seems to fit perfectly into this archetype. Giratina already aims to go behind in prizes, beginning the game with Abyss Seeking or Spit Innocently, and eventually making up for it with one-hit KOs and hand disruption. With Paradox Rift, Tina can now use Iono or Roxanne and Counter Catcher for a boss's order's effect in the same turn as hand disruption, something that wasn't possible prior without including cross switchers in your list. Giratina Lost Zone typically has a centralized matchup spread due to its variety of attacks and lack of opportunistic weaknesses, so it should fare decently enough into a fresh metagame. Next at number 9 is a newcomer from Paradox Rift, Gholdengo EX. This archetype is more fleshed out than most other Paradox Rift decks since Japan received Gholdengo EX in a prior set months ago. Looking at tournament results and deck lists from Japanese websites, it's inconclusive what the best way to build a Gholdengo EX deck is. I've seen pure metal energy in addition to lists which splash in water, psychic, or even darkness energy, and then attackers using those energy types. The pure metal energy lists seem to be the most common, so I've chosen to feature those today. Here is a Gholdengo EX list which is very streamlined and focuses solely on Gholdengo EX as the attacker, using plenty of energy recycling and energy searching, as well as just drawing cards to build large hands each turn. Having only an EX Pokemon to attack with can cause issues in some matchups, so here is one more Gholdengo EX deck list, which uses a 2/2 line of Scizor from Obsidian Flames. Its Punishing Scissors attack can do a ton of damage for just one metal energy, and Scizor stays out of range of Cramorant's Spit Innocently, as well as Sablei's Lost Mine, so it can trade favorably against both of those. Before we cover the 8th best deck, I'd like to ask if you've ever felt frustrated, disappointed, or even confused after a bad tournament run. You prepared, practiced, and fine-tuned your deck, only to lose round after round and drop from the event. If you answered yes to any of these, you need to read my free article, How to Succeed in Competitive Pokémon TCG. I have a series of more articles like this available on Metafy, as well as individual coaching that has helped dozens of players like yourself level up their game. Check it out in the links below. Now let's get back to the video. Number 8 is Lost Zone box, both Turbo Lost Zone and Lost Zone Kyogre, since these deck lists can typically be very similar. I think something like Arthur's second place deck list from Lille Regionals is a good place to start for Lost Zone box in the Paradox Rift format. This is because Arthur included 4 Cross Switcher and a Canceling Cologne in his list. These cards will be even better now with the new Jirachi being tossed into decks left and right. The combination of Jirachi and Manaphy on an opponent's bench shuts down Radiant Greninja and Sableye, which stifles the Lost Zone archetype too much in many cases. So something like this combination of Cross Switcher and Canceling Cologne, or maybe Counter Catcher, is likely to help the cause. It's also possible to include Paradox Pokemon like Iron Hands EX or Iron Valiant EX into Lost Zone decks, but the community vote left Lost Zone box with Paradox Pokemon at number 13, so we won't be covering that today. Lost Zone box has been a tier 1 archetype for several sets now, and it likely won't just go away because of a new set. The archetype has proven to be adaptive as well as dominant enough to include these new techs against it, so I imagine it will continue to succeed even in this new format. Next is Colorless Lugia VSTAR. The winning list from a Japanese event I chose only includes one new card, which is TM De-Evolution. but there are other interesting card choices here as well. The Technical Machine de-evolution is included to assist in the Charizard EX matchup, which has been unfavorable for Lugia in the Obsidian Flames format. Some Charizard EX decks may take the route of TM Evolution and will rely less on rare candy, but TM de-evolution can be deadly against a Charizard EX player who rare candied multiple Stage 2 Pokemon. Along with TM de-evolution, this list plays one box of Disaster to help against decks that can one-shot Lugia, as well as a Vitality Band so Lugia can swing for 230 damage against Pokemon like Roaring Moon and Iron Hands. With this inclusion of tool cards, this list plays 2 Arven. The last notable inclusion here is Dunsparce to protect Lugia and Archeops from Iron Hands EX. Lugia should continue to be a playable competitive deck, but the community has only voted it to be 7th best today. Moving on, we have Gardevoir EX at number 6. I've chosen an interesting Japanese deck list for Gardevoir, featuring the new Screamtail as well as Drifloon and Bravery Charm, since the charm works well with both Drifloon and Screamtail. Raihan is a very interesting inclusion, but it makes some sense to find a single copy of Bravery Charm or Counter Catcher, or to guarantee reversal energy on an important turn. Jirachi is also included and should help immensely against Sableye and Medicham V. Gardevoir EX was deemed as borderline dead in the Paradox Rift format pretty early on by the Doomsayers due to Iron Hands EX, which will trade favorably against most single prize attackers. But I think it's pretty foolish to think one of the best decks in the format would immediately fall out of the competitive environment with the release of a new set. I think we'll see a lot of highly experimental ways to play Gardevoir EX in the coming weeks, including this list without previously staple cards like Cresselia and Radiant Greninja, and also a different variant of Gardevoir built with the new TM Evolution card in mind as a possible new way to set up this deck. Next is Iron Valiant EX at number 5. Iron Valiant EX will likely inspire multiple different decks, but the most promising variant of Iron Valiant EX from Japanese tournaments and my personal testing so far has been the Rapid Strike version. Iron Valiant EX can spread a maximum of 8 damage counters a turn, just with its ability, which makes it faster and less of a liability compared to Rapid Strike Inteleon VMAX. Similar to the current build of Inteleon Urshifu, this variant of Iron Valiant EX should struggle against Mew VMAX and Lugia decks, so we'll see this deck list has 2 Drapion V to make the Mew matchup better. The community already has high hopes for Iron Valiant EX, ranking it at number 5 for this video. We'll have to see what the coming weeks hold for Iron Valiant EX and the many variants of decks that can spawn from it. If you'd like to support my channel, you can subscribe for more Pokemon TCG content and visit my sponsors and affiliates, which are linked down below. Use my coupon codes at pokecollect.com for a wide selection of sealed products, pre-orders for new releases, and unique mystery box items. PotownStore.com when shopping for Pokemon TCG Live Code Card. Dragon Shield sleeves, my favorite card sleeves to use, and Into the AM apparel for comfortable and passionate clothing. If you have Pokemon TCG bulk lying around, start selling it now with ease at tcgbulk.com. And don't forget to stop by PokemonCard.io for deck building, community forums, and news articles. You can find free and premium articles and videos for competitive Pokemon TCG at Metafy, and you can directly support me if you become a Metafy member. Information for Pokemon TCG coaching and gameplay reviews can also be found at my Metafy link in the description. The 4th most voted archetype is Charizard EX. Charizard EX won a regional and earned several other notable placements in the Obsidian Flames format, so let's see how it might fare into the new Paradox Rift meta. This is a City League winning list, which focuses on the Technical Machine evolution instead of rare candy as the main way to evolve into Charizard. Going second with Arvenzard was already pretty good, but with this variant of Charizard EX you will definitely want to go second and use TM Evolution on turn 1 to evolve 2 Charmanders and 2 Charmeleons. With this passive evolution strategy, your opponent will more than likely take the first prize card, which makes Counter Catcher another good inclusion for this deck. The second list I chose for Charizard EX is quite the opposite of the first, since this will want to go first to use Bombardier EX's fast carry attack, which can be used on the first turn of the game. Both of these lists include Jirachi to help against Sableye and Medicham V, as well as Counter Catcher, which is just a very strong card that many decks will play. Number 3 is Roaring Moon EX, which is a brand new card and brand new archetype out of Paradox Rift. I've chosen this winning list from a Japanese city league which uses 2 of the new Morpeko, which has been a pretty overlooked card. Morpeko does 70 damage and then moves its energies to a benched Pokemon, and it also has free retreat. So not only will it trade into Comphase and Sableye, but at worst it's a free retreater. This variant of the deck is also playing a 2-2 line of Bibarel to smooth out the deck's endgame, which other variants don't have much support for. Regardless of how the list is built, Roaring Moon EX decks will be very aggressive decks that can capitalize on slow starts and take down even the bulkiest Pokemon with Roaring Moon's Frenzied Gouging. Roaring Moon EX has an instant KO attack, an efficient second attack, high HP, and plenty of support, so I think the community was right in voting this as the 3rd best archetype going into the new set. Next is Miraidon EX Flaffy as the 2nd best deck. Miraidon EX Flaffy has consistently been on a tear ever since the World Championships, with the Full Grip Games squad of Andrew Mahone, Jesse Parker, and JW Craywall making a name for this deck in some of the largest North American events ever. Miraidon EX now gains the possible inclusion of Iron Hands EX, but will it be worth molding the deck around with XP share, double turbo energy, and maybe even some Raihans to help with the hefty energy cost of Amp You Very Much? Looking at the Japanese local events taking place, Iron Hands EX is being used in just about every successful Miraidon EX deck list so far. Of course, this is early days with Paradox Rift, and most players haven't even played a single game yet with the new cards. And finally, the community voted Chien-Pao Caliber as the number 1 deck going into the Paradox Rift standard format. Chien-Pao Caliber was already a top 10 deck, getting multiple top 8 placements at recent regional championships. But like Miraidon, it gains the new Iron Hands EX card. Iron Hands EX should smooth over the Lost Zone Box matchup and the Gardevoir EX matchup for both Chien-Pao and Miraidon. Chien-Pao is essentially erasing its worst matchup in Lost Zone Box if Iron Hands EX is as good as we think. So in that case, it makes sense that Chien-Pao Caliber is at the top. There you have it, the community choice for the top 10 decks in November. Let me know in the comments how much you agree or disagree with today's rankings, and let me know if we missed any new decks. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time here on Celio's Network.